In this video, I will demonstrate how you can join a Linux machine to a Windows Active Directory domain controller. For this demonstration, we will be using CentOS 8, which is very similar to Linux Red Hat Enterprise Server. And we also have a Windows Server 2019 with the domain controller installed and the server promoted to the domain. In this demonstration, we have sanuja.local domain as the main domain on the Windows server. If you would like to know how you can install a domain and promote your server to the domain, I have another video explaining this Windows domain configuration, which you can go and watch if you would like to know how it is done. So before we begin, the first thing we're going to do, we will go to the CentOS and we will update the Linux. To update the Linux, I'm going to go into super user. And then we're going to go yum update. And it will go ahead and start downloading the packages. After the OS update has been done, the next thing we need to do, we need to install the packages needed for joining the domain. To join an Active Directory domain from a Windows server, the Linux need a couple of packages. Those packages are listed in the description of this video. And I'm going to use the yum install to update these packages. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy and paste all those packages for yum install. And it should install those packages for me. If you want to know what we entered to get these packages installed, these are the ones. And I will, as I mentioned before, list these items and how to install them in the video description. I may also include an article on my website sanuja.com so that you will see it's easy for you to copy and paste. Next step is to change the host name. To change the host name of this Linux server or Linux system, what we're going to use is the hostname CTL. So host name CTL, and we're going to set host name, and I'm going to name this server as linserv.sanuja.local. So the computer name would be linserv.sanuja.local. This is because it will be part of the sanuja.local domain. And we're going to press enter. And that should change your host name. To check if the host name has been changed, we can enter host name and press enter, and it should return linserv.sanuja.local, the one that we just changed. You can also check your host name by typing cat etc host name. That will return the data within the hostname configuration file. We will also check the DNS domain name. To do that, we're going to do DNS domain name and press enter. And it should return sanuja.local. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to make sure this Linux server or Linux machine is in the same network as your Windows machine over here. I'm going to simply assign an IP address to this server or Linux machine, And then I'm going to manually point it back to 192.168.1.3, which is our main domain server. However, in real world environment, you may also use a DSCP, a separate DSCP, and still get the Linux machine to join following the exact same steps. Now we have both the Windows server and the Linux machine in the same network, and I have applied a static IP address. I can go ifconfig, and that should return with the static IP address with pointing back onto the Windows server. Now we're going to simply test if we can ping between the two machines just to check the connectivity. So 192.168.1.3 is my Windows machine, the Windows server, and I'm just going to ping it. And as you can see, it does have a connection. And I'm going to go back to my Windows machine, and I'm going to open command prompt by typing cmd. I'm going to ping 192.168.1.4, which is our Linux machine. And as you can see, it can ping each other now. Now we need to set up the host file in our Linux machine. So let's go back to the Linux machine, and we are going to go into the host file and change the IP configuration. So I'm going to open the host file using nano, and it is in etc folder, and the host file is host. And you will see two entries, one for your IPv4, which is where the loopback address, which is 127.0.0.1, and IPv6. We will not be using IPv6, so you can either leave this as it is, or you can decide to just delete it. So in my case, I'm going to delete it. Instead, now I'm going to enter the IP address of my CentOS machine, which is 192.168.1.4. And then I'm going to enter the host name of the Linux machine. So when we request 192.168.1.4, it will return back with the host name. And when we ping the host name, it will return back with the IP address. So in my case, it's going to be linserv and linserv.sanuja.local. Make sure the spelling is correct, because if this is incorrect, it will not work. And then I'm going to save the entry and exit out of the file. Next, we're going to see if we can ping by the host name and return back with data. So let's go ping linserv, and as you can see, it can ping. And we're also going to ping with linserv.sanuja.local. Again, the connectivity works and it can ping back. Now we will go to our Windows server, and remember that this Windows server is not only our domain controller but also our DNS server. We need to add a record to forward lookup zone in the DNS manager in order for Linux to join the domain. In order to do that, go to Tools, open DNS Manager. On the left hand pane, expand forward lookup zones, and you should see your domain name. In my case, it's sanuja.local. Click on that domain, and on the right hand pane, in a blank space, right click, select New Host, A or Quad A record, and it will give you this new host window. My domain name is sanuja.local, but my Linux machine is linserv. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add the name called linserv, and it will automatically populate the FQDN fully qualified domain name as linserv.sanuja.local. And for the IP address, we're going to enter the IP address of your Linux server. In this case, 192.168.1.4. So this IP address is basically the IP address of the Linux server, 192.168.1.4, which I have set up as static IP. And then we're going to click add host. You'll get a message saying the host record linserv.sanuja.local was successfully created, and you can click done, and the record will show up under DNS manager. And if you click on this record, you can see the record is there with the information that you just added. Now we will check if we can ping the Linux machine from the Windows server. To do that, go to command prompt and type ping linserv.sanuja.local. And as you can see, there's a connectivity to the Linux server. The next thing we're going to do is to set up the resolve.conf file in the Linux system. This will make sure that the information within the CentOS will allow it to see the DNS server that knows the main domain. Remember, our domain and DNS server is the same machine as the Windows server. To do that, what we will do, we will open the resolve file. So we're going to use, I'm going to use Nano, but you can use any editor. So it is in the etc folder, and it is resolve.conf. This file is generated by the network manager, and that means basically every single time you reboot the computer, this file may be overwritten by the computer. So if you reboot this machine, you may have to go back here and fix the entries. But for now, I will not show you how to fix, stop this from being overwritten. We will just edit this file so we can get this Linux connected to the Windows domain. You already have the sanuja.local or your domain entry already entered in here, and you will also have a name server, in this case 8.8.8.8. This 8.8.8.8 came from right here. Because I set it up the DNS as 8.8.8.8 at the beginning of this setup. However, I'm going to change this to the same one as the Windows server, which is 192.168.1.3, and click apply. And now instead of deleting this Google DNS, I'm simply going to add a name server just above it. And I'm going to enter 192.168.1.3 because that is our Windows server IP address right here. And then I will save this file. And you can reopen the file to make sure that it is still there. And we are good to go. Before we join the Windows domain, the ADDS domain on the Windows server over here, what we will do, we will check if the Linux machine is aware of any domains or realms. So we'll go relam list and it should return blank. That because it doesn't have any domain connection at this time. So we can check if it can see the domain or the relam sanuja.ca. So relam is a domain. It's another word for domain in Kerberos. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to do relam and we will type discover sanuja.local. Unfortunately, at this point, I actually crashed my Linux machine. I don't feel like going back and rebuilding the machine just to show you how to join the sanuja.local domain. So instead, I'm going to show you a different Linux machine that has been connected to a Windows domain, a different domain called rhl.local. But I will show you how to unjoin and join. Sorry about this, but unfortunately I just crashed, and the steps are exactly the same. Just follow the steps, and this last part I'm just going to show you on a machine that already domain joined to a different domain. So I am on a different Linux machine. As you can see, it is connected to a domain called rhl.local, and you can see this from the Active Directory users and computers. And under computers, you see this particular server is listed in here. So what we're going to do, we're going to show you that how you can join that domain. So first thing we need to do, we need to check if we can discover the domain. So we're going to type relam. So it would be REALM discover jl.local. As you can see, it did discover this particular jl.local domain, and it shows it has Kerberos and login policies allowed, and the Sampa packages are working. Now if I go in this machine, relam list, it will also show that this machine has already been connected to a domain. So since this machine already connected to a domain, I don't want to unjoin this from this domain. Instead, I'm going to show you relam command. So if you type relam, REALM, and press enter, it'll give you a list of items that you can use to join a domain. What you're going to do, you're going to type relam, and then you're going to type join -v and capital U with the minus, and put administrator as a user. So for all Windows domains, administrator is a user account for the root user account, and then relam names, so jl.local or whatever your domain name is. It could be sanuja.local. So again, unfortunately I can't show you that part, because reason for being like this is already in the production environment, and but that's how you join a domain. And that's everything, folks, and have a nice day.